Yes, good morning. I am in the heat team in the Scottish Government. Let's get that started. So I'm going to quickly go through heat and then sort of talk a bit about district heating, and hopefully this will build on some of the really useful and interesting session we had first thing this morning. So as many of you will know, we published last year our draft heat generation policy statement towards decarbonising heat, maximising the opportunities for Scotland. So first of all, why do we produce this policy document? Why do we need to decarbonise heat? Well, as we heard from the speakers this morning, tackling climate change is really important, and heat accounts for 47% of Scotland's greenhouse gas emissions, and it's 55% of the energy that we use. So that's the challenge in how we decarbonise a network. And what is the opportunity? And I think WWF set out very clearly this morning that there is a huge opportunity there. We spend an estimated 2.6 billion a year on heating and cooling in Scotland. And also critically, heat is a local issue. Heat policy is largely devolved to the Scottish Government, but it's also very much a local issue. We all generate our own heat. We buy fuel and generate heat in our buildings, in our homes. So how you decarbonise that, what infrastructure you need to change that heat supply, to decarbonise that heat supply, is very challenging, but it is also a huge opportunity, an opportunity to look at local energy supply, and particularly to tackle things like fuel poverty and how we can decarbonise and deliver affordable heat at the same time. And I think you're going to hear more about that this afternoon. So we published our heat vision and heat hierarchy. To have a commercially viable, diverse industry and a largely decarbonised heat system by 2050. And that's the hierarchy, and I think it's important that we're starting from the bottom there. In terms of priorities, it's the top priority, but it underpins all the work that we're doing, and I think it's been touched on earlier, that the need to reduce the demand for heat. That's a target that we're actually doing quite well on, the target of 12% reduction in our energy demand by 2020. By 2012, it was actually 11.8%, and as a whole, and that included a 15% reduction in heat demand since the baseline in 2005 to 2007. The next thing we need to do is look at how we supply heat efficiently. So that's both within buildings, the heating systems within buildings, for example, low temperature radiators, but also critically to look at how we supply heat efficiently between buildings, how we make the best use of all the heat resources that we've got and supply it as efficiently as possible. And that obviously takes us on to look at district heating. And finally, looking at low carbon heat and renewable heat. As Gina said, we've got an 11% heat target by 2020, and with 3%. That was actually the figure for 2012 because of the way the data is done. We still have a long way to go, and it is a very big challenge, and we need to do more to deliver renewable heat. But I would say we're doing quite well in UK terms. Under the renewable heat incentive, 16% of the domestic and 18% of the non-domestic installations, accredited installations, are in Scotland. But I completely agree that there's a lot more to do on that to meet our 2020 target. But it's not just renewable heat. We need to make more use of low carbon heat. Now, the latest figures are 12% of our heat comes from combined heat and power, so that's equivalent to the heat that would supply about 400,000 homes. We have thermal treatment, guidelines for energy from waste plants. They have to have a heat plan on how they're going to use the heat generated from the electricity generation, and new regulations on the use of excess heat from industrial processes. So we need to look at how we make more use of renewables and low carbon heat. And again, as well as individual solutions, district heating gives us an opportunity to make the best use of those resources. Low carbon heat, waste heat, new renewables like geothermal that we're working on as well. But before I get on to talking about district heating and what we're doing on that, I will just emphasise again the work that we're doing on reducing our energy demand as to underpin everything else that we do. Some of you may recognise Doug the Caterpillar, the Home Energy Scotland mascot. I don't know if anybody here has downloaded the knitting pattern from the website and knitted their own Doug the Caterpillar draft excluder. But obviously there's lots of other information on that website about how to improve the energy efficiency and reduce the heating in your home. We've had a little bit about Resource Efficient Scotland. We'll hear some more from Alan. That programme was set up in April 2013 to provide information to businesses, industry and the public sector on resource efficiency. And I think since then it's identified around sort of £12 million a year in savings from resource efficiency. And we've heard from Stephen already this morning about the work that SFT is doing with the public sector on maybe looking at infrastructure, on energy efficiency and on district heating. So that, like I say, takes me on to what we're doing on district heating. District heating is a core part. We have we propose to set targets in the draft heat generation policy statement. It's not the only solution, so we need to have a planning and a strategy for where the optimal areas are for doing that. So one of the things we've done is produce the Scotland heat map, which was launched last year. Now that's brought together a huge amount of data on the heat demand from buildings, right the way down to building level, on sources of heat, and that's the version. There's a sort of slimmed down version available on the Scottish Government website, but then a much more detailed heat map with all that data that we have made available to all the 32 local authorities in Scotland. So the things that the heat map can do, first of all, just provide information. For example, that's where there are district heating projects in Scotland, which you can see district heating projects, existing ones and ones in development. And it's quite, when you look at it at that scale, it's actually quite a dent. You can hardly see the map at all, because there's a lot of projects going on. But more importantly than that, it lets us do analysis of our heat demand and look at where district heating is perhaps the optimal or possibly the only solution to decarbonising the heat supply. That's a piece of work we've been doing to look at the public sector estate. And there's a report which we hope to make available soon to look at, if you have public sector buildings, a number of those in areas of high heat demand, to identify where are some key opportunities to explore for district heating. The report itself is fine, it's a static document. What's much more useful is that we have a dynamic tool that we can share with local authorities, public sector bodies, all the people who want to use the heat map. So they can carry out the analysis, set criteria, set priorities. For example, is it addressing fuel poverty and social housing? Is that a key target? And other priorities. So that's a really useful piece of work. The next thing to talk about what we're doing is, and this is the slide without any pictures, it's regulation and standards, so no pictures, but very important information. I mentioned the regulations on the use of excess heat from industrial processes. That's under the Pollution Prevention and Control regulations, which came into force in October. So that's for new plants being permitted, have to look at how they could make use of heat through district heating, for example. The next one, heat network metering and billing regulations. Anybody who operates a district heating scheme, I'm sure, knows about this. If you don't, you need to go to that website, download the notification form and submit it to the National Measurement Office by the 30th of April. So that's quite an important one if you're supplying heat to anybody in any form. Also, talking about planning, our National Planning Framework and Scottish Planning Policy published last summer made some very clear statements about the use of heat mapping in local authority local development plans to identify opportunities for district heating. And we're doing more work on that. My planning colleagues are looking at producing further guidance on that, hopefully by the summer. So that's nearly done, in fact, because I'll just mention, since we've got our logo all over the place, the Heat Network Partnership. And that's brought, I've already mentioned some of the organisations, Resource Efficient Scotland, Scottish Futures Trust, Scottish Enterprise, and of course the Energy Saving Trust as well, who, amongst other things, manage our district heating loan fund. And we brought those together to create this partnership because there is this support available. And we were hearing about the Low Carbon Infrastructure Transition Programme. And just to be clear, these two are very integrated. It's all about how we get projects from the strategy, identification of opportunities to delivery on the ground. So the Heat Network Partnership, there's a lot of information and more, we're putting up more information on the website all the time, so do go have a look. But it's very much about how we move projects from that stage to actually see them deliver on the ground. So the technical aspects, the financial aspects, and you know, the support and strategy. So I'm really interested to hear from the other speakers because it is all about seeing projects deliver on the ground. So I look forward to hearing about some of those that are actually happening. And that really is me. Thank you.